Legend has it that if you leave the house and you forget something and have to go back to retrieve it, you should stay put for a few minutes. It's believed that it is a spirit watching over you, intervening to delay and protect you from harm. Okay. Now, that particular thing struck me as, well, not just very folk magic-y, but very also back to where we started in the inspiration tonight, the chance and destiny bit. Because what does this mean? I mean, it means, you got to have some main character energy, right? To have the gods be looking out for you, to have your guardian angels popping up and, just saving you by, oh, well, you forgot your wallet, Mike, so go back and get your wallet that, theoretically saves you from some, car accident or something to that effect, right? Maybe, right? Which is literally which will lead us into the wild part of this. And of course, what this means about chance and destiny itself. But then, of course, what about the idea of folk magic or the guardian angel? Or, as I'm going to be talking about, the threshold effect, which, like I said, starts us all the way back. We did a fantastic show on this, and I'm going to read you what this exact thing is. It's the doorway effect. I'm sorry. So it's also called the location updating effect. And if you're not familiar with this, it's a wild thing. And so I'm going to tie it back into this in just a sec. So bear with me for one moment, please. So the doorway effect is a replicable psychological phenomenon characterized by short-term memory loss when passing through a doorway or moving from one location to another. We tend to forget items of recent significance immediately after crossing a boundary and often forget what we were thinking about or planning on doing upon entering a different room. Research suggests that this phenomenon occurs both at literal boundaries, like moving from one room to another via a door, and of course metaphorical boundaries as well. So imagining traversing a doorway, or even when moving from one desktop window to another on a computer. Super wild, right? It starts to get really strange when you consider the VR element of this. And there's other studies here that they've talked about this recently, and this is from sciencealert.com. And check this out. All these links are in the description down below. If you want to read a little bit more on this, I encourage you to do that. But this is back from 2021, but it's talking about the doorway effect of not just being, as we just stated there, direct and literal, but also sort of in our mind's eye, a threshold in our mind, whatever that looks like. And in this case, VR seems to work perfectly well for this exact thing. So, and here we go. So a lot of things in this new study, but they're saying that this typically happens more when you're tired, which makes some sense because your brain's kind of squishy and in that, sort of a liminal space itself, kind of maybe fading off to sleep a little soon or a little later or whatever, right? But then the weird part is that when you combine all the ideas and take us back to where we started with sort of the threshold effect, it sort of evoked a bunch of things in my mind, specifically not just, let's say, moving out of the space, forgetting something directly, that kind of has some, hints of predetermination or something happening where, the history of the world and universe has already been written, but then these little moments sort of bring you back to slow you down or to change your direction or to make you delay and we've all seen those movies where the cascading events, kind of one little thing, somebody spills a cup of coffee and it turns into this entire cascade of this amazing narrative that happens as just a result of somebody spilling a cup of coffee on the bus stop or something. What is that movie? Anybody remember that movie? I have no idea what it is. It's just an old latent memory I can't really tie back to an actual thing, but it's something that I seem to recall as part of watching movies a long time ago when I used to watch movies. But okay, sound is good. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Okay, so back to this. Now, a couple things at play here, specifically that predetermination thing and that a chance and destiny and fate and, are we fated to be this or are we fated to be that? Is everything predetermined or do we have free will? Back to that old conversation, which is literally probably one of the oldest conceptual frameworks of philosophy ever, because the gods, right? The gods are there. The gods are looking out after us. We got the guardian angels. We've got the demigods. We've got all the things that we've talked about, not just on this show, but in Greek mythology and everywhere else. And so you got to wonder if any of this stuff is actually at play. And again, if you don't believe in the gods or whatever, I use that not just literally, but also metaphorically. So you take this as you like. I'm not trying to be blasphemous or weird. Well, weird is my middle name. Weird, strange. Michael Weird Strange, because you got to double it up, right? Double down when you're definitely got it going. But the point is that you choose whether it's metaphorical or literal or somewhere in between, because I think this is usually where these conversations happen, where they're probably the most poignant in that liminal space. So you choose what this looks like to you. But back to it. So legend has it, if you forget the house, leave the house and you forget something, you have to go back to retrieve it. You should stay put for a few minutes. It's believed that it is a spirit watching over you, intervening to delay and protect you from potential harm. And the first thing, of course, that came to mind was the angel, the guardian angel, that type of sort of protective spirit. But then also it evoked that idea of that threshold, sort of you leaving the house, kind of going from your space, your sanctuary, as we've called it in the past, out into the world. So I don't know, a lot of things going on here, and I don't really know the answers, of course. And by the way, this is a fantastic time to warn all of you again and drop all the disclaimers. There's no truth to be found here. It's just ideas. It's just philosophical constructs, as I'm always calling this, because that's really what it is. Thinking about the old ways, kind of aiming them in the new direction of time, the arrow of time, and trying to determine what old stuff we need to keep, because the new ways seem like they want to throw out the old ways incredibly quickly. Okay, so there's that. So no truth, just ideas, and you get to cherry pick what you take and what you don't take, and that's that. So if anybody's wrong here, it's me, and that's that. Okay, so past the this whole doorway effect, which is incredibly strange, it also evokes sort of the idea of like the house spirit. Okay, so a guardian of the threshold, as we've talked about in the past, in the doorway effect, but also not just that, the old garden gnome, right? The actual house spirit that is there sort of watching over you, the friendly spirits, as they say, even in some cases the fey folk, or maybe the friendly ones, or however you want to label it. And we'll get to some of that tonight, because there's a lot of really let's say interesting traditions when you're talking about these old where is it? There it is. There, in this one in particular. So this is from thoughtcode.com. Check it out. Links in the description. Domovoi, D-O-M-O-V-O-I, the house spirit of Slavic mythology. And if you notice, if you're looking at the stream, it looks like one of those gnomes. It's like a very small, sort of, diminutive, smaller than a dwarf, maybe even hobbit size. Homo floresiensis, how do you say it? But which they've determined recently is probably smaller than they thought. The original, the Hobbit ancestor from 700,000 years ago. But anyway, I digress there. But it's just small. This is a modern sculpture of what these things might be. But they are house spirits. They are friendly entities that are trying to keep you on top of the feng shui, or whatever, right? Whatever that means, which again is one of those interesting parts of sort of house magic and this threshold magic, because within your sanctuary, there is safety, there is solace, there is, hopefully, cross my fingers for you, there is peace, and there is a place to be and chill and sort of decompress from the dangers of the world. And, I say dangers, semi-loosely, semi-lightly, but, the world can also be dangerous directly and really. So, it is a sanctuary in some capacity. But the whole point of this, and why I'm bringing all this up and kind of tying it all back, is really we're talking about this threshold of walking from our sanctuary out into the world, and then having some sort of fate and destiny sort of action pulling and pushing on us to chance and destiny, rather, pulling and pushing on us to come back and pick something up that may save us from some catastrophic thing, or may not, of course, because how would we know without a time machine? And sort of replaying that exact instance, very Doctor Strange style, where he, has the time stone and does, 4 million iterations of the end game, and there's only one where they win. Well, in this case, there's probably more where we win, and, individually, collectively, of course, and, Troubled Minds fam, hey, let's all win. And so that's what I mean. But I don't know. So the few questions as we start tonight, specifically this. Number one, is it possible that this whole bit of chance and destiny are a little more intertwined than we ever dreamed? Number two, what about these house spirits? Do you think there is some actual entity from folklore in any capacity whatsoever, sort of the feng shui magic or the magic of the sanctuary or whatever it is, looking after us? And it might be sort of back to where we started with, the chance and destiny bit. And number three, what about this threshold magic? Have you guys ever heard of that? So, of course, there you go. That's where we start. That's where we need to be for exactly this moment, because, yeah, almost as if we set up this moment like we're on a script or on a timer, a radio timer. Well, here's what we're going to do. Take a quick break, 1 minute, get a word from our sponsor, which in this case is Human Inspiration. Don't go anywhere. More Troubled Minds coming up in exactly 1 minute, and we're talking chance and destiny tonight threshold magic, and seasoned intuition. And I'll get to intuition and what that means momentarily. We started with the idea of chance and destiny, okay? And this weird sort of folklore, folk tales. So legend has it that if you leave the house and you forget something and have to go back to retrieve it, you should stay put for a few minutes because it's believed that it is a spirit watching over you, intervening to delay and protect you from potential harm. Now, that in and of itself is very provocative, obviously, in the sense that, let's say the spirit world cares about what happens to us. All right. And so that's one of the most basic, fundamental, what's happening beyond the veil and what's happening here on Earth and terra firma. And, how do those two worlds collide or interact, or do they? And as usual, right, I don't know the answers to those things because they're, above my pay grade, as I always say. But there are people that have intuition in these aspects, maybe people that have had interactions in particular with these maybe house spirits, or maybe interactions with a guardian angel, or, the entities like that. But I don't really know what this looks like in the larger context, but I do wonder if it has something to do with all of this kind of put together, not just the house magic of sort of the sanctuary, the threshold magic and the doorway effect of when you move and sort of come in and out of the sanctuary. We've talked about it in the past, in terms of like the temple space of, something like the Ark of the Covenant, or, these holy places where it's confined to a space, which doesn't really make much sense in the context of the metaphysical, because if the veil is the veil and we can interact, with it in any point wherever, then sort of a sanctuary or holy space doesn't make a ton of sense, because then you could sort of, really see it or feel it or communicate with it wherever you're at, whether it's a meditative effect or whatever that happens to be, right? The intuition of our ancestors, and I don't know, just throwing some ideas out there, but that's the point. And so getting back to this, there's a lot of things that kind of come together. And one of the ones that caught my attention was, of course, these household deities, which are going to be these little spirits that we're talking about. So just real quick from the old Wikipedia, the Ministry of Truth, a household deity is a deity or spirit that protects the home, looking after the entire household or certain key members. It has been a common belief in paganism as well as in folklore across many parts of the world. Once again, this is the best part of this, is that a lot of this stuff, the folklore and the wisdom of the ancients, as I like to call it, is worldwide. It's not something that happens, very specific to one part of the world. We have this entire space, the time space of the entire planet, where a lot of these same stories, mythologies, folklore, they are echoed. They are, they may not have the same names, the same, exact sort of representations in terms of language and ideas, but they're very close. And so it does make my tinfoil tingle when you start to think about all of this stuff as maybe being real. And that becomes the question tonight. So household deities fit into two types. Firstly, a specific deity, typically a goddess, often referred to as a hearth goddess or domestic goddess, who is associated with the home and hearth, such as the Greek Hestia, the ancient Greek goddess Hestia. The second type of household deity is not one singular deity, but a type or species of animistic, which usually has lesser powers than major deities, sort of demigods or fae folk, or you label it as you will. This type was common in the religions of antiquity, such as the Lares, I believe is how you say it, of ancient Roman religion, the Gashin of Korean shamanism, that's Gashin, probably said that poorly, and the Kofgodas, I know I said that poorly, of Anglo-Saxon paganism. These survived a Christianization as fairy-like creatures existing in folklore, such as the Anglo-Scottish brownie and the Slavic damovoi, which we talked about just a little while ago. But so the question is, as usual, how come all of these entities are represented in basically every culture the world over, even separated by Lord knows how many wild spaces in between, and the time dilation effect and everything? And people are talking about these things, these sort of house spirits, as being real. And is it part of the sort of the element of the sanctuary? And again, back to the thresholds and how this fits into the conversation is that, we started with the old, and by the way, of course, that's part of the deal tonight, chance and destiny. What are we? Are we actually creating our own future, or is our own future preordained and we're just sort of following the path toward it? which I hate, of course. And I'm sure many of you hate the idea, unless maybe you don't. I don't know. That's why we talk to each other. But what do you think? But leading all the way back, so this is, notice, it's sort of like a superliminal threshold effect, sort of this threshold magic aspect. So if you're leaving your sanctuary and you go out of the threshold, and then you're warned, or not warned necessarily, but you forgot something that typically you don't forget. Every time I leave, I'm like, keys, wallet, phone, right? And then I leave. You got to check to make sure you got all the stuff. And then sometimes I'm like, nope, I'm not taking my phone, keys, wallet, and I'm out of here, just because, you got to throw the algorithms off from time to time, right? But point being is that you have these rituals just to make sure you don't forget your stuff when you're moving from place to place and outside and inside and all the rest. But for whatever reason, on a particular day, for a particular reason, you forget something. And then you even maybe drive 90 seconds away. And you're like, damn it, I forgot and then you turn around and go back and get it. And so the question becomes, do little moments like that actually have a sort of push and pull on the idea of chance and destiny? And are we, forging our own path, or are we following the preordained is part of the conversation tonight? Because as usual, we like to put a bunch of things together. But that would mean, of course, that in this particular case with the spirit trying to save you from something, that there are many people who don't get saved, as usual, right? And this is one of the arguments against, let's say, God per se. Let's say, again, metaphorically, I'm not not trying to be blasphemous, but how come, some people catch this sort of guardian angel over their shoulder and other people do not? And that is, the mysterious ways of the metaphysical, of God, of spirits, of all the things. And again, God, again, like I said, metaphorically, I'm not trying to be blasphemous here, but so that is one of the arguments an atheist might have is, well, how come, this person was saved, but that person wasn't saved? How come this, a child has cancer and this person who's just a terrible person smoked and drank their whole life and was just mean to everybody and they lived to be 95 years old? I don't know. Again, once again, above my pay grade. And how does it fit into the larger context? Yeah, I don't know. But, it is arguments in the sense of that. And I don't know. As part of all of this, the spirit watching over you part, to me, is not just, let's say, cosmic in terms of, let's say, a guardian angel, something to that effect. Again, in philosophical construct, but also are there these sort of brownies or home spirit entities that are kind of running around and trying to keep a feng shui style flow within the household? I don't know. Real? Nah, somewhere in between. And yeah, let's see. What else do we got? Good stuff here. So the doorway effect, again, is a weird one because this new study actually suggests that it is not just as literal and direct as we see. So they did. Here we go. Through a series of experiments in virtual reality. Now, this is where this gets weird. A total of 74 volunteers were asked to move through computer-generated 3D rooms, trying to remember certain objects from previous rooms, such as a blue cone or a yellow cross as they went. Very much like the Zener cards, right? Very Ghostbusters. If you guys have seen that, the very first scene from that, it's hilarious. Quote, at first we couldn't find the doorway effect at all, so we thought maybe people were too good, that they were remembering everything, says psychologist Oliver Bauman from Bond University in Australia. So then we made it more difficult and got them to do backward counting tasks while moving around to load up their working memory. Forgetting did now occur, telling us that overloading the participants' memory made them more susceptible to the effect of the doorway. In other words, the doorway effect only occurs if we are cognitively in a vulnerable state. Now, that particular thing is very sort of demonic possession in some capacity, right? Like in a cognitively vulnerable state. Weird, right? That's incredibly odd that modern science is really kind of echoing some of the stuff from the ancient ways. And we don't have to talk about, spirit possession tonight at all, but it does make me wonder and scratch my head what the hell is going on with this type of stuff and what are we dealing with? And that's about where we're at. Let's see. What's up? Doku over on Twitter X says this. I went into the garage, opened the garage door and went to close the door to the house and realized I had forgotten the key. 5 seconds later, the steel cable on the opener snapped and swung across the parking area. It left a dent in the metal garage door panel. There you go. Great story. What's up, Doku? He's been on the show. Baron Doku, if you guys remember him. Great stuff. Yeah. Has that happened to anybody else? Yeah. Wild, right? I don't know. No answers from me, just more questions. And what do you think about all this stuff?